Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to look at the weekly metagame breakdown for the top performing best decks in Standard, best of three, traditional Standard, Standard with a sideboard, whatever you want to call it. We are going to be looking at Mythic rank today because there's 2 days left in the season. Folks are trying to lock up a top finish for the month, so we will take a look what's working best in Mythic rank, and we're getting this data from UntapedGG companion tool. Tracks user win rates, and then so you can track your own win rates, aggregates it for stats that we'll look at today. If you want to use Untap, link is in the video description. And then in that video description, you'll also find all these deck lists timestamped with importable deck lists that you can move to Arena, as well as just some details in terms of where you can find my content and ways to support as well. So let's jump into it. We got Mythic rank and popularity of the day. This is kind of the distribution, what you're going to anticipate seeing in Mythic rank. Not necessarily the win rates, but kind of the distribution. Izzet Prowess, about 18%. We had RC Montreal, the Canadian RC, my local one. And it was over 30% Izzet Prowess, kind of the top played deck in terms of volume as well. Mono Red Aggro at 10%, Dimir Midrange at 9%, Oculus at 6%, Mono Black Midrange at 6%. Then we have like your Azorius Omni deck. Omni did win the Canadian RC, Orzhov Pixie at 4, and then Azorius Control at about 3. So we're actually not going to cover Azorius Control in this video. It did have a good showing at Hartford, finishing second, but it's about 53% on the ladder right now. So a little bit lower than some of the decks we're looking at least when it comes to Mythic rank. So looking, we have 23,000 games played in the last week, 22nd through the 29th, 35 game min cap. And then Dimir Midrange, highest win rate deck, 76%, 38 games. And a couple interesting inclusions in this one. We're seeing kind of a tuned variant of the deck. So you have your kind of core, the mid-range decks, things like Spyglass Siren, your Deep Cavern Bats, your Preacher of the Schisms, Curiosities, you cheat in your Kaidos, but a couple interesting inclusions here. And I think they're like, Bloomburrow's got mice. Mice are really strong. What if we just play Bloomburrow Rats? We have Azure Beastfinder. So this is an interesting kind of card here. So 1/3 blocks reasonably into some of the creatures. Itself can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or greater, but when it attacks, you kind of lock down one of their either artifacts, creatures, or planeswalkers, lose all abilities. And notably with this, you can shut off Cutter. So Cori Steel loses all its text, so you kind of get around it that way there. Against bigger creatures, you can kind of lock down their Sheoldreds or stuff of that nature. So some interesting text in terms of that. You'll see the one of Fairy Mastermind, and you get the like heavy draw decks. There's a lot of cantrips going around, so incidental that it works. And you get some extra cards. Flood Pit Strandr taps down some creatures. And then Vren the Relentless. So one of the RCQs, this card, no, it was a store championship for the Urza Saga full art. This card kicked my ass on mono red because it just shut off all the death triggers. So it's kind of a Kalidas, but rats. So instead of making zombies, it makes rats. They exile instead, so Heartfire Hero, anything with a death trigger gets exiled instead, which has some utility in that way. Even in, like, incidentally in the mirrors, you kind of recycle cards with Gix Command, some value there. Enduring Curiosity in the mirror would just be exiled instead, so they don't get back that half of it. Singular Kaido in the main, you have another Kaido in the sideboard for those grindier matchups. Soulstone Sanctuary, as well as Restless Reef in there. You have Gix Command here as another sweeper. Vren, again, as we mentioned, some of the utility with things die. When death triggers matter, it's a reasonable threat. Kaido, not great against the aggressive decks, but against like the heavy removal decks, this kind of just snowballs. Tishana's Tidebinder for the activated ability. We have Filigree Silex in here, reasonable, so it can deal with the tokens themselves at a Cori, because Dimir doesn't have a way to actually hit a result Cori Steel. You can Tishana's it, you could technically bounce it, but they don't really play bounce. This can click up and eventually deal with that. It could also just deal with the wide board of tokens when it comes down immediately. And then you have negates for cheap counters, Fairy Masterminds, good against beans, anything drawing a bunch of cards. Disdainful Stroke for big mana decks, Anoint cheap removal, 3 steps ahead for the bigger mana decks. Ghost Vacuum for graveyard hate, Duress for more additional hand hate. We have Azorius Omni next, 70%. What's interesting with this one, and similar with the one that won the RC in Montreal, is neither of them actually have the combo finish. So you'll either see the battle that gets Jeskai Revelation of its sideboard. Well, actually, sorry, this one does have the combo. Founding of the Third Path was hiding out here. Some of them will just play dragons now at this point. Like, just you cheat in Omni, draw through your deck, play out your dragons, and then you basically protect it with counter spells. But this one does have the combo. Missed that there. But basically how this works is with Meringue River Regent, it picks up 2 permanents. So you loop 2 Meringue River Regents picking up each other, and then Founding of the Third Path here that mills for 3. And then just mills out your opponent that way there. Otherwise, it's just a control deck that kind of draws and discards. You can do the combo as early as turn 4 in terms of getting out the Omniscience. Sideboard, you can kind of transform into more traditional decks. So we see Beza's, Grand Abolisher in here. In most cases is now Voice of Victory. It's easier on the wild cards as well. Voice lets you kind of put pressure on them, a little bit more aggressive. You'll sometimes see as well Overlord of the Mistmoors, just another way to kind of become a fairer deck. Split up cheap removal, just some more bounce, disenchants for hate pieces, Ghost Vacuum for graveyard hate, Authority in here, deal with the aggressive decks as well. Jeskai Oculus, 69%. So this deck here is looking to basically rummage a lot, basically draw, discard, filling your graveyard and then reanimating Oculus or another powerful kind of 3-drop, recommission, helping hand. All the extra drawing works really nice with Prophetic Memory. This is another deck where like the Fairy Mastermind plays really well since there's so much drawing and discarding with the deck. Some Abrades in the main. We have Torch to Towers removal. So just kind of working on the flex spots. Proph's Edict with Steam Score Scholars, very strong. Sometimes you'll see Winter Night Stories in here as another looting style effect, opting to have a little bit more interaction for the aggressive meta. In decks that are eating away at your graveyard, you have Chandra Sparkhunter in here, just kind of disregard the graveyard kind of strategy. Brotherhood's End can deal with hate pieces or as a sweeper. Sheltered by Ghost for the red-based aggro decks. Pyroclasm for the go-wide decks. Negate for cheap counters. High Noon for Prowess or Omni combo. Disdainful Stroke in here for big mana decks. Destroy Evil deals with enchantments or big things. And Ghost Vacuum for graveyard hate. Izzet Prowess. We'll give it 69 as well. So this deck here, what we're seeing is some convergence on kind of your threat package, being 4 Cori, 2/2 split with Drakecatcher and Slickshot, and then the Swift Spears in here. You'll sometimes see Hearth Elemental in here as well. Some are trying to go bigger with Valerian Terror as well, but for the most part, it's kind of there. Drakecatcher is really good in the mirror, lets you go offense, defense, makes you more tokens. Playing with like Monstrous Rage pushes through a bunch of damage. Stock up refills your hand, and then just a bunch of cheap cantrips. Obviously, playing multiple spells per turn with Cori Steel is the benefit. You have Sunspine Links in here for the greedy mana bases, life gain decks, Ral for the heavy removal decks, Drakecatchers for the mirror, Disdainful Stroke in here for big mana decks, Torch, cheap removal, Lithomantic Barrage, really nice against things like Oculus, Beza, Spell Pierce, cheap disruption, Ghost Vacuum for graveyard hate. Now at the Canadian RC, top 8 was a teamer list. So this one here is kind of like Otterless Otters. You have Up the Beanstalk, you have the bounce package of This Town Ain't Big Enough with Storm Chasers, you can pick up the Roaring Furnace. So a lot more spells based. You can generate tokens on your opponent's turn 2. Analyze the Polling can be used as a way to kind of hit early land drops, cheap spell that you can play. Late game, you collect evidence. The only creatures in the deck are Hearth Elemental, another way to discard your hand, and just a 1 mana way to get a creature out that then also triggers beans. Things like Heritage Reclamation in the main are fairly useful. Just, you know, in the mirrors, game 1, you have Answers to Cori, you can deal graveyard hate. So it's just a flexible card. You can deal with Omni, hits a bunch of the key kind of decks of the format. Sideboard, you have Keen-Eye Curator as graveyard hate. You have Obstin's Baloth for the discard decks. Windmaw, Stormbrood is 5 damage that can then be cycled through the deck. You ask, how do we make white mana? That is with the Tarnation Vista's secondary ability. Your monk tokens are white, so you could generate mana off that. Pyroclasm for Sweeper for go-wide decks. You have Braids in here. Mirrors, creature decks, change the equations good in the Prowess mirrors, or like red-green stuff. Strokes, big mana decks, Flood Maws, Heritage Reclamation. So you're a spells deck that has like the win con of Cori Steel Cutter. Mono red aggro, 66.6, Mark of the Beast. So I played this at FNM last week. The only difference I did with my list, I ended up doing -1 Scorching Shot, -1 Witch Stalker, 2 Lightning Strikes in the main. I went to a new LGS and was anticipating more aggro, and all 3 of my matchups were black-based mid-range decks. I went 2-1, beat Dimir, beat Golgari, lost to a Dimir mid-range deck. But the big thing here, a lot of these lists are adopting, is Magebane Lizard, obviously against the green-black matchups or like the Dimir matchups, not that great. But this has a lot of utility against Oculus as well as Prowess, just dealing a lot of incidental damage and dodging a lot of the common removal. So like the deck itself, it's nice playing some mono red and paper. Got some of my mice out. The sideboard, I played 2 a card the sideboard, -1 Filigree Silex because I didn't own one. Instead, just playing in a braid for the Prowess matchup, anticipating that. I also did a split of Ghost Vacuum and Soul Guide Lantern. I had both the Ghost Vacuums, but I wanted to try out Soul Guide. Just Soul Guide deals the entire graveyard as opposed to 1 by 1. So I think I like that split, but otherwise you have the Mountain for when you bring in Sunspine Links, Case for the grindier matchups, Filigree for Prowess matchups, Scorching Shot for more 5-base removal damage, Magebane for the Prowessy or Omni decks. Even against control, it's reasonable. Torch Tower for cheap removal, Litho Barrage for, like we mentioned, Oculus, Bezos, stuff like that. Mono black mid-range, 65%. So this is kind of a Demons-esque deck. Quasari Regent, just Vampire Nighthawk on drugs. But you have your Demon package, you have the Unholy Annex for card advantage, a lot of removal in here. Just kind of grind them out that way there. You'll notice a speed package, Amonkhet Raceway, Speed Demon as their ways to draw some cards. But just kind of eat away at the hand, 2 for 1 your opponent as much as possible, and then outgrind them in value, drawing cards off like the Unholy Annex. Aklazotz could come back, kind of eat away at their hand. Your Preacher draws you cards as well. This card did a lot of work against me in FNM. A lot of my opponents had it, and it's just a way to kind of trade, gain some life, and then on the flip side, it just comes back, suits up another creature, and gives them value. Unholy Annex for the grindier matchups, Deadly Cover-Up as Sweeper. Ancient Vendetta kind of over Stonebrain. I think I like Stonebrain better, just given that it's easier to cast and curve out earlier. Withering Torment as enchantments, Blot Out's good against Kaido, big mana stuff. Filigree Silex, like we mentioned in Dimir, a way for these black decks to deal with artifacts or go wide boards. Geoldred as Sweeper, Outrageous Robbery for Domain, or big mana slow decks. Ghost Vacuum for Graveyard Hate, and then just a variety of hand hate and cheap removal. Pixie. Orzhov Pixie, 65%. So this deck here is leveraging Temporary Lockdown proactively. So it deals with your opponent's board, but you're looking to kind of pick up over and over your lockdown with a bunch of ETB effects. So you kind of put under it like Hopeless Nightmares, Momentum Breakers, Nowhere to Run. So you force your opponent to discard a bunch of cards. They take damage that way there. You pick it up with Nurturing Pixie or Sun Pearl Kirin, and then you could put some under and just kind of loop it over and over again to kind of get those ETB effects over. You grind them out with like Preachers, Lauren, Lilies, your kind of top end, Sheoldred, Bezos, and then draw cards with Unholy Annex. Wiltleaf Liege for the mirrors in terms of like Pixie Mirrors, the Hopeless Nightmare. Bezos for the aggressive decks, just kind of a Stonewall. Lauren, Artifact, Enchantment Hate. Lily for the grindier matchups, Control, Conceals, Flanker, Flash Threat that can deal with graveyards. Just flexible all around, gain you some life if needed. Rest in Peace for Graveyard Hate. Get Lost as cheap removal, and Duress for hand hate. Jund Roots, 64%. So you have kind of the fair game plan, just to eat away at stuff in your graveyard. Sidious Roots, whenever a creature leaves your graveyard, you're able to get a plant token. You have Tyvar out, they immediately tap for mana, so you kind of combo that way there. The creature coming out of your graveyard from Overlord of the Balemark also triggers it. You can basically get a loop going effectively with Osteomancer's Adept. So you can forge by removing cards from your graveyard, and then you can cast spells from your graveyard. So you kind of get that value with Snarling Gorehound. It lets you put more cards into your graveyard, so you kind of loop it in that way there. You're able with Agatha's Soul Cauldron to give the abilities, kind of imprint them, so you can either put Voldaren Thrillseeker under it, or with the plant tokens make any color mana, you can make just basically huge creatures and then fling it at your opponent. In your sideboard, you have Greater Ashen City, a land that could basically eat away at graveyards, kind of grind your matchups. Harvester of Misery as a sweeper. You have Disruptive Stormbrute, early removal, then Artifact Enchantment hate on the back end. Stormweaver kind of gums up the board. 3 bodies for 4 mana. The Death Touch is also reasonable if you have Delirium in that case, but the deck's pretty easy at Delirium given your self-milling. Skyfisher Spider is a way to blow up stuff. Baloth for the discard decks. Qasari Revenant, again, just life gain, ways to blow it up. You have Scavenging Ooze in here. Graveyard Hate, life gain, triggers your roots. Treasure's Insight against the aggressive decks, just more ways to mill, gain you some life. Canker Bloom in here, blows up artifacts, enchantments. Now, notably, the difference between Might and Bloom is Might can only deal non-creatures, and then this deals with any artifacts, enchantments. So just more kind of utility in that sense. Gruul Delirium, 58%, but the stats, oh yeah, 64. And then 58 here. So this deck here is another deck that's looking to kind of leverage the graveyard in the sense of Delirium, just multiple card types. Tersa flits this deck pretty nice. There's some versions that play like Overprotect. This one's opting for Canker Bloom. You have some Monstrous Rage, Audacity in here. Violent Urge is basically 1 mana double strike in most cases in the deck. But you're making big creatures, hasting them out with like Breakout, Wildfire Wickerfolk, 4/3 trample for 2 and haste, kind of winning that way there. From your sideboard, you have Sunspine Links for the greedy mana base, Outpace Oblivion, 5 damage removal spell that's also an enchantment for creature types. Pyroclasm in here as a cheap sweeper, Paw Patch Formation in here. Notably, most of your creatures dodge Pyro. Paw Patch Formation deals with a lot of the common hate pieces. You can also do Heritage Reclamation, just another way. Haywire Might is also one that I like playing in these decks. It gives you multiple creature types and deals with most of the common hate pieces. Your deck becomes you're more impacted by Graveyard Hate, given that it shuts off things like Patchwork Beastie and stuff. Overprotect for the heavy removal decks. Canker Bloom again for hate pieces. Abrade, hate pieces, creature removal. Soul Guide Lantern for your opponent's graveyard. Snakeskin Veil is just more protection effects. And then lastly, Naya Legends. So 58%. So Annie joins up Brew. So this one here, 5 damage to any creature, and then doubles doubles triggered abilities for legendary creatures. So this one's kind of a dragon version. You have Sarkin that would make you multiple tokens. Surik would draw you multiple cards. Dragonhawk would get double ETBs, so give you some value there. Rith gives you multiple dragons on excess damage. You ramp with like Llanowar Elves, Herd Heirloom, Lumbering Worldwagon, Marera. Also ramps you up, so kind of a dragon. Annie joins up package. Hitali for the big mana decks, kind of mid-range feasts. Season of Gathering, good against like Domain, artifacts, enchantments, kind of things. Vivian's for the grindier matchups. Bonehorde Dragosaur, strong against like red base removal and the grindier matchups. Baloth for discard, Graveyard Hate, Sheep Sweepers, and just flexible removal. Another deck that may want Heritage Reclamation since it can hit artifacts instead. So it's kind of the difference, like Paw Patches if you're worried about flyers, a Heritage Reclamation if you're worried about artifacts, and gets you coverage. So that is it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking, and good luck to those trying to get that top 1200 finish. Thanks for watching.